Harold Moody was a great Anglophile, a great believer in the empire, very much an empire loyalist. And what distressed him was the discovery that there was racial discrimination here in the army, the armed services, and the civil service.
This is a man who does not want to pull down the Union Jack around the empire. What he wants is a genuine, multiracial, properly democratic empire.
Harold Arundel Moody was born in Jamaica in 1882. He was the eldest son of a middle-class family. His father, Charles Ernest Moody, owned a chemist shop in Kingston. His mother, Christiana Ellis, a woman with little formal education, was ambitious for her children. In a colonial Jamaica, stratified by pigmentation and class, Moody was introduced to the politics of race from an early age. Religion played a central role in family life. At 22, Moody was a bright, ambitious young man, loyal to England and her empire.
What they did, upper middle class families, was to send their children to England to make them into young Englishmen.
He arrives at Bristol, gets on the train and goes to Paddington. And there's this large, bewildering city. 8 million people, huge houses. The only difference is that there aren't electric trams that Moody had experienced in Kingston, so Kingston's a little bit ahead. The first problem for Moody is, where's he going to stay? And he walks the streets looking for somewhere where he can stay before he goes down to King's to start his medical studies. And he's rebuffed, turned away at a number of houses. It's a London that has very, very few people who are black. There are perhaps a few around the dock area, seamen. There are a few professionals.
The warm welcome that he had expected from the mother country was not forthcoming. There was widespread historical and geographical ignorance of Britain's colonies and its people.
The main problem which colonial students faced was the problem of racism. And this racism manifested itself in a colour bar, in accommodation in particular. It's very, very difficult to find accommodation in London. Students used to complain about what they called the colour tax. That's to say, if you were black, then you paid more.
For Harold Moody, his first brush with racism was a shock. But his involvement with the church in Jamaica opened some doors.
Moody has got some letters of invitation to the London Missionary Society, which was the Congregational Mission, and he gets his accommodation partly through them. So he's got friends in reasonably high places who are familiar with working with people from overseas. And Moody is then taken into various households as a guest. He's invited to dinner. And he comments that people viewed him as someone rather strange. How is it you speak English? And this is a man who only speaks English, who knows more about Shakespeare than he knows about any Jamaican writers or West Indian writers. And people are curious, and they think of black people as being somehow savage or primitive. And they're confronted by this very sophisticated, well-read, highly intelligent, well-spoken, bourgeois black man.
Harold Moody was a good student and he excelled during his time at King's College Hospital. He won several prizes. One of them was this Bible that became his diary and confessional. But Moody had to deal with racism on the streets of London every day.
The children would come up and ask him the time, and when he told them the time, they'd run away laughing and saying, "Oh, it speaks." Yeah, he had some few incidences in his lifetime, of course he did, but it didn't change him one little bit in his viewpoint. No, it didn't make him bitter at all. He was able to, I suppose by the grace of God, to overcome all these various problems. I mean, God was so real to him in his life.
Moody's faith and determination helped him through his studies, and he graduated successfully, only to face yet another hurdle.
Moody fails to get a job in a hospital, the kind of job that he, by his qualifications, would have been entitled to. He's actually turned down and told that poor working class people would not want a nigger for a doctor.
After many rejections due to what today will be clearly referred to as institutional racism, Moody took out a 3-year lease on these premises in Peckham. The first year was very difficult because the income of the practice was just £1. Moody's income had to be supplemented by the Marylebone Medical Mission. Why didn't he give up? Well, he strongly believed that God had called him to serve the people of South London. And he stayed for another 10 years. And the major events in Moody's life during those 10 years are documented in his Bible.
Harold Moody marries a white nurse. That would have been reasonably unusual in Britain. And his family were not terribly happy with this. Her family certainly were not, although both families come round to it in the end. A mixed-race couple would have stood out very much in South London in 1913, 1914. But it's a very happy marriage.
With a wife to share his burden, Moody set about building up his practice and getting involved with the local congregational church.
Our life revolved around the church, really. We went there 3 times on a Sunday morning, afternoon and evening, and very often during the week for clubs and organizations. The church meant everything to him. And in the early days, he was Sunday school superintendent at Clifton Congregational Church, which was the first church I remember we went to.
By 1919, Harold and Olive Moody had 4 children. He had completed his studies and was now a doctor of medicine. His practice was thriving, and his deep faith and strong sense of discipline kept order in the home.
He woke us all up. And we all got up. We were all up early, and we had a routine of a cold bath in the morning and then breakfast. We were all there for breakfast, and after breakfast we had devotional period before we went off to school, and he went off to do his work in the surgery. He was a very popular person in Peckham because of his practice mainly. He was a very good doctor, and people appreciated this. And people came from far and near to see him.
By the time Harold Moody moved here in 1921, he was a much loved and respected local doctor. His medical practice was thriving, and by the help of a God he trusted and dearly worshipped, he had achieved most of the targets he set for himself. For example, he'd finally obtained a doctorate from King's College London. He had a very happy family, and his children were being put through private education. And typical of the man who never forgot his roots, he had taken his wife and children to Jamaica to visit his much-loved mother. And although his preaching throughout Britain was mainly to white congregations about equality, he strongly believed that he was on his way to achieving something for his own race.
We had a home of 7 bedrooms, 5 of which were double bedrooms, and a big lounge and dining room, and in it also contained my father's surgery and waiting room. So it was a large home. And I say we had our own tennis court in the garden, so we all grew up to play pretty good sort of tennis, and we also had 2 maids that always lived in with us, and so we had a pretty good lifestyle, really, I suppose, in those days.